It was just a typically crazy busy morning. I'm trying to get off the phone as I log off my computer and grab a pile of papers to rush over to church. I'm moving quickly, head down because I'm behind and feeling the pressure of the deadlines. And I hear, "Hey, Father," and look up to see a man I didn't recognize. My reaction? I'd like to tell you that I was so happy to respond to this little interruption, to this man's question that was on his heart. But under my breath, the first word I muttered to myself was, let's say less than something I like to say out loud right now. Another interruption. When we read the Bible, we see it is filled with stories of interruptions, of people having their plans interrupted. Today is just one of the many times that we see Jesus himself get interrupted. Jesus is at a wedding, probably just enjoying himself, when his mother says, "Hey, these folks are running out of wine. They're going to be so embarrassed. Can you help?" And Jesus is like, "Oh, come on, Mom, I'm doing something else. Please, not now." Mary doesn't let him off the hook. She turns to the waiters and asks them to do whatever her son tells them. She knew he'd step up and help out. Jesus was always being interrupted. People calling out for healing or in need. Incredibly, Jesus always seemed open to the interruptions, so available and attentive to the disruptions and surprises. Nor does he seem to ask all the questions we tend to ask. Does this issue or this person deserve my time and energy? Or it's their own fault. Why didn't they buy enough wine in the first place? He was never so fixed on his task at hand that he missed seeing the folks right in front of him. It seems, however, that most of us just don't like interruptions very much. We much prefer things to be predictable, to be able to finish what we started. But like it or not, the interruptions will just keep coming. How many parents of young ones ever have a day without surprises and disruptions? One young dad said, "I like to be organized and have a plan. I hate interruptions." One young mom replied, "Interruptions are my life now." And all the moms around her nodded. And one added, "After a while, it's like, Mom, Mom, Mom." In my head, I'm like, "Leave me alone." "But Mom, the house is on fire." And I'm like, "Too bad." Most moms probably understand. But interruptions are one of the most common ways that God shows up. It's in the interruptions that we most commonly receive a nudge from God. I think of Martin Luther King Jr., whom our nation honors this weekend. Almost all the good he did because he was willing to be interrupted by someone else's plight. If he had not been willing to be interrupted, simply kept to his own schedule and the business of his church in Atlanta, the world would be a very different place right now. The truth is that each time we face an interruption, we have a choice to make. We can ignore it, or we can work to be open to what it might have for us. For it is deeply true that our responses to the unpredictable visits and surprising interruptions form us into the persons that we become. It has been argued that a completely predictable life is actually not really living. And one of my favorite definitions of hope, or at least a key element of hope, is an openness to a God who continually surprises us. We will be surprised by God if our hearts are at all open. To be unwilling to be surprised means we have closed ourselves to the God who visits us in the interruptions of our lives. So, let's pay attention to the interruptions as they come and be available and attentive to them. My first impulse might be to complain or inwardly whine a bit. And sometimes the interruption might be something I need to just briefly acknowledge and move on from. But mostly, I am invited to see interruptions as opportunities of grace. Interruptions are part of how God is forming me into Christ. There's an old story of a loyal, faithful monk. He did his work with joy and prayed the best he could, but he always felt inferior in his prayer. He had read the lives of some of the saints who had visions in which Jesus appeared to them. Now, he loved Jesus and longed to be able to see him in prayer, though he doubted it would ever happen to him. Until one Sunday afternoon, he went to his cell and had just begun to pray when suddenly Jesus was there. The monk was so ecstatic he couldn't speak, he could barely breathe. He starts to formulate a sentence when there was a knock at the baker's door for food. Not now, he thinks. Finally, this moment with Jesus. Dutifully, however, and with a certain sadness, he left his place of prayer to feed the hungry family. Certain that he had lost his chance to savor the vision, he was surprised when he got back to his room that the vision was still there. Jesus, I am so glad you are still here. I was afraid I would not see you again. And the monk then heard something that changed his life. That was me also at the door for you. No less than right here in this very moment. My friends, the interruptions will keep coming. The doorbell rings, the phone call comes, that person shows up just we are in the middle of something. It's all a part of what each of us calls life. In ways less dramatic than for that monk, but no less real. In those interruptions and surprises, we meet our God.